When you jump on a Zoom call, prompt an AI to write an email, or send an international bank transfer, the experience feels entirely wireless. It feels instant, like all that data is simply floating through the air. Because of that feeling, a widespread misconception is that the global internet runs through satellites. It doesn't. Satellites do matter for remote coverage, mobile broadcasting, and backup connectivity, but they do not carry the bulk of intercontinental data. This chart shows the estimated cost per unit of data transmission. On the left is satellite delivery, and on the right is submarine telecom cables, which are roughly 2,800 times cheaper. Because of that massive difference in cost and physical capacity, cables actually carry over 99% of all international data exchange. The cloud is an illusion. The internet we interact with every day is a planetary-scale optical system. Our messages, videos, and workloads travel as light signals through more than 1.7 million kilometers of hair-thin glass resting at the bottom of the ocean. But the ocean floor is a hostile environment. The International Telecommunication Union reports that these submarine cables experience roughly 200 faults every single year. Those breaks rarely come from dramatic acts of international sabotage. Over 80% of these faults are caused by everyday human maritime accidents, mostly commercial fishing operations and dragging ship anchors that snag the lines. If you run the math on those 200 annual faults, it means the physical backbone of the global digital economy is being severed, on average, more than 3 times a week. Which raises a very obvious question. If the literal foundation of the modern world breaks every few days, why doesn't the internet constantly collapse? The first line of defense is how the system is physically built. At the very center of a submarine cable are optical fibers. Lasers on one continent convert your data into pulses of light, shooting them down these delicate glass strands to receivers on the other side. To survive the pressure, those fibers are wrapped in protective layers of plastic and steel wire. This heavy armoring is intensely concentrated near shallow, dangerous coastlines, where the risk from fishing gear and human activity is the highest. But as you move out into the deep ocean abyss, a new problem emerges. Light naturally weakens over extreme distances. An optical signal simply cannot survive a transoceanic journey on its own, fading into darkness. To solve this, engineers splice devices called repeaters into the line. Placed about every 60 to 70 kilometers, these complex, powered cylinders constantly amplify the weakening optical signal so it can make the full trip. Finally, the light comes ashore at a cable landing station. This coastal facility transfers your data from the oceanic fiber into the domestic terrestrial network. The thousands of miles of deep-sea wire usually get the attention, but without these coastal data centers converting the light back into usable telecom infrastructure, the entire oceanic system serves no purpose. Still, physical armor has limits. Under the sheer weight of a dragging ship anchor, even the thickest coastal cables will inevitably snap. The internet's true defense mechanism is an engineered redundancy called diversity. Network operators design the system so that the moment a physical fault is detected, traffic is instantly rerouted through multiple alternative cable paths to reach its destination. This workaround keeps the traffic moving, but it forces increased network congestion. Pushing international data through narrow detours drives up latency, the time it takes for a signal to travel, and can severely degrade service for entire regions. Financing this massive map of redundant routes requires enormous capital. Historically, telecommunications companies funded these links. Today, large cloud platform companies like Google are stepping in as major investors, actively financing and laying new submarine lines. The resilience of our global communications relies heavily on commercial decisions. These major private corporations build overlapping routes specifically to ensure their high-capacity cloud workloads and AI applications never go offline. But that systemic redundancy is not distributed equally. While major economic hubs have dozens of overlapping routes, specific regions of the map remain dangerously exposed. If an island nation depends on only 1 or 2 cable landings, a physical fault severs their entire connection to the outside world. When a break occurred off the coast of Tonga in 2024, the resulting single point of failure left the entire nation digitally isolated for a week. Zooming out, physical geography violently constrains the network. To connect continents efficiently, operators are forced to route cables through the exact same narrow maritime passages, creating massive strategic choke points where dozens of critical lines cluster together. The Red Sea is exactly this kind of risk zone. A physical break in a remote region triggers a catastrophic domino effect. When those fibers snap, international banking transactions halt, government operations freeze, and emergency healthcare providers lose access to critical data. The vulnerability is so acute that military alliances have stepped in. Following disruptions in the Baltic Sea, NATO launched operations like Baltic Sentry to actively monitor and protect this critical undersea infrastructure. Undersea fibers have transitioned into the realm of high-stakes geography. They now function as frontline assets for national security and economic survival, dictating how global alliances monitor and protect their digital borders. That is the ultimate paradox of the digital age. The most advanced, supposedly virtual achievements of our era depend entirely on extremely fragile strands of physical glass lying quietly in the dark, thousands of meters beneath the waves.